Welcome to a new episode of your Bannister Mile. Today we are happy to welcome Anneke Lucas. Anneke was sold as a young child into a murderous pedophile network, where she has experienced before the age of 12 the worst atrocities known to humankind. We talk to Anneke about her past, her present, and her future. One thing we can assure you already now is that Anneke is one of the most loving, smiling, and shining human beings we have ever met. She's a real inspiration and light to the world. We wish you many insights from Anneke's massive Bannister Mile.
Your Bannister Mile, der Selbsthilfe-Podcast für dein Leben in Freiheit. Mit Clara, Lennart und Christian.
Hello again, everybody out there. We are very, very honored to have a special guest today, Anneke Lucas. And of course, Lennart is here, and of course, Clara is here, and of course, the baby is here again today. Lennart, are you in Hanover today?
No, I'm actually literally 100 meters away from the seaside. I'm close to the coast side and seaside. It's lovely. Close to Rostock.
Close to Rostock, cool. And Anneke,
Yeah.
where are you?
And I am also close to the seaside, which is the seaside near New York City.
Okay, so we have a very international kind of more than a triangle. How do you call this? What's the English name for four corners? A rectangle kind of thing, so to say.
Where?
Yes. Well, I actually don't feel fit to introduce you in detail because I don't want to kind of put any things before we start to talk. So would you be so kind and to maybe give us a little introduction of yourself and whatever you want to share with us from your story from the beginning, and then we will get in a surely have some questions or some ideas, some inspiration. Thank you.
Okay, sure. I think you must have found out about me mostly through my work as a survivor, and then specifically as a survivor of satanic ritual abuse.
Yes.
And my story that connects to the Belgian Dutroux case, although I was there before Marc Dutroux was there because I'm older. But this is the story that I've been telling. I started speaking about this in 2013, more than almost 40 years after I was released from the network. Mm-hmm. It took me that long to feel ready to speak up. And since I started speaking up, my story has done the rounds. And I have a blog that is popular with people on my website. And I also, I work with survivors. I work with people privately. I speak. And I also run an organization that brings yoga and meditation into prisons in and around New York City.
Mm-hmm. I think the first contact I had with you in the digital world was your TED Talk.
Yes.
Yes.
Which was in Klagenfurt in Austria.
Seriously?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
This was this is my hometown?
If that's Klagenfurt?
Yes, it is Klagenfurt. Yes, on the lake,
I
right?
love Klagenfurt. I went and jumped right in the lake.
Yeah, that's where I grew up. We had a house on the lake.
My goodness, what a beautiful place.
Yes, it is, isn't it? I didn't realize this was a TED Talk in Klagenfurt. Fascinating. Okay. Okay. And then there was a longer documentary where you speak very lot in details. Was this televised, or was this a kind of production of a station, or was this a private endeavor?
I'm not sure which one you're talking about. There's a 30-minute documentary about my work in prisons that was televised in Belgium.
No, it was something where you talk about your abuse and everything. I think it's in black and white.
A 4-part interview on collective evolution, which was 4 hours in total.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And
4 hours of interview.
Wow.
heavy duty. You listen to all of that?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
All right then.
Well, I couldn't stop because because I was so fascinated, and maybe this is already to kind of come to kind of how do you say, to make a bridge already to where you are today, because I was so fascinated by this incredible aura you had, and this this strength and everything, and you talked about all these kind of things beyond my imagination, and still you were there, present, totally present, and just being present. I think that's the best way to put it. Mm-hmm. So maybe the first question would be, how did you manage to have this Bannister Mile, or this kind of huge transformation?
The only reason that I was able to transform at all is because of the spiritual.
Yes.
Because of the knowledge that I'm not a physical body. I think even as a child, I felt a benign, loving presence with me. And I always received what I needed. So when we look at this experience from the outside, it is beyond horrifying. But going through that experience as a child is very different. That is to say, I'm not saying it's not horrifying, and I'm not saying that I've had to grieve for 30 years everything that the child had to go through and had to suffer from the adult's perspective. But as a child, there was a certain grace that was present, so that there were insights given in certain moments that helped me go through certain ordeals, or I even went to the other side. And it was a very conscious experience with that was glorious. And I think the strongest motivation today to heal, to reach that bliss, which is truth, which is love. And I have that motivation from that experience. And again, it was an experience that was extreme. It was a big miracle, but it was also what I needed. And so I feel that I always got what I needed. In my young adulthood, I was completely atheistic. I did not believe in anything. I was very anti-Catholic, I should say, because the people, a lot of these abusers, and including my parents, were Catholic. And so I just saw that hypocritical side of Catholics and that deep hypocrisy that I think links all the way to the Vatican.
Yes.
Who were also involved. I mean, the Vatican, the network that which I was a child sex slave, it's those who rule the world, and that includes people from the highest places everywhere, not just political, but also the church and so forth. So to come back to spirituality and openness to, I was allergic to the word God. And then it just was a slow awakening, and yoga and meditation brought me there without the dogma.
Oh yeah.
Like, do it, try it, see what happens. Mm-hmm. But I found, those teachings, and I got back in touch with that love, and that if I was open enough through the meditation, if I'd go deep enough, the intuitive answers that would come. And sometimes, again, not me, it doesn't feel like it's my ego. It feels like it's just flowing through me. And so the work, the spiritual work, has always been the most important, to allow as much as possible to allow that higher the grace to flow through me rather than push the ego away.
Yeah. I have a question which is very personal, and as I said, in our talk we had before this podcast now, that I, grew up very happily and protected, and I have absolutely no imagination of what you experienced and what Clara experienced and so on. I mean, I don't, pretend to have even the slightest clue. However, when I met Clara, all those years ago, she had the situation that she still had flashbacks and stuff like this, yeah. And she would, when you started to talk about certain topics, yeah, she would just basically collapse. We just fall to the floor, kind of space out, and that's it, yeah. Or she would have very bad dreams, and she would, have flashbacks and all this kind of stuff, yeah. And then at the very beginning of our relationship, I remember very, very precisely, we were, waking up in the morning and we were talking and so on, yeah. And we were talking about this, and she said, okay, but, I went to this therapist and do that and did this and so on. And then there was a question which was coming up in me. I had no clue where it was coming from. It was not something which you think long. It just came up, and I asked her, in fact, did all of this happen to you as a being? And she started to laugh, and she said, no. And the second kind of, or half-second question was, was your being, so you're for me, in my world, the being, or what I call the I am, is more than just the soul. It's just the biggest, like the part of God in us, or however you want to call it, the universe. I don't know, whatever people want to say, yeah. And I ask again, was this hurt? And she said no. And the amazing thing was that since this talk, it never happened again till today.
Wow.
There was not one flashback, there was not one collapsing, and the dreams had changed radically. And
wow.
This for me, I mean, I've worked already since I'm 21, I work with people. Yeah, I mean, over the singing, I started over the singing, and then people realized, oh, the guy, has some good ideas maybe to talk. Yeah, so I had in my coaching 3 other women who was actually abused, yeah, and I could help them as well, but I never experienced something this kind of radical. And it somehow fits to what you said, yeah, that, you had this experience, and even in these most crazy moments, you said you went to the other side, and you had, finding the universe, finding God. I don't know how you call this, yeah, this presence, but how would you say this relates to what you just said?
Well, I think what happened is beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. It did not happen to me that way, for sure. But what I understand now is that I received some unconditional love in the first years of my life. Mm-hmm. And I believe that this unconditional love, which is the pure, the truth, and the pure substance of what we truly are.
Yes.
So because I had received that substance, I had a little bit of self-esteem. Mm-hmm. Very hidden, because I was very abused. And so there wasn't much of it, but in crucial moments, there was something in me that said no. And in the network, which was 5.5 years from just 5-6 years old to 11, there were only 3 times where I said no. And I felt each time that I'm saving my soul. I felt each time, if I don't stand up now, I'm going to die. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't about my physical body dying, but it was about something in me dying that could never be revived. That was the connection to my true self. And I thought, if I let this be, I'm going to be just like them.
Yeah.
And so 3 times I said no, and ironically, it put me both in more trouble because I was then considered problematic, but also saved my life. It also did save my life physically, because when I said no, there was this higher power that flew. I don't know, it's not me, but I was just taken over by a greater power that took over and gave me this supernal strength. Because as a little girl, to say no to 30 people that are adults and that don't care about your well-being at all, it takes something unusual, and that is that truth, and that brings that power from beyond and the energy.
Yes, and I guess this was also then a total different presence at this moment. Then I guess, no.
Yes, and one, it had its effect also.
Exactly.
Yeah. The first time it happened was the first time I had been humiliated at a network orgy, and one person was very affected by it. I recognized that person later as one of the cabinet ministers in Belgium. And that was the only time I ever saw that person in the network context. They saw me stand up, 6-year-old girl will stand up and say, "You cannot do this to me." And he was very troubled. I could just see that there was this one person looking very troubled, and he ran away.
Okay, so basically through this, something changed in this person as well, I guess.
I don't know.
Yeah.
He was involved in some pretty bad scandals later.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that he was touched. There was this one person who was touched, and I don't know how that may have changed things for them, but it just showed that he had a conscience. Mm-hmm. And then the last time I did it, it was with a person who was not at all in touch with their conscience. So the immediate effect was that things got very, very bad for me. But it did also save my life. And they somehow decided not to kill me or have me killed, which would have been the logical thing to do in that situation when I was 9. That wasn't the last time, that was the second time. So they didn't have me killed. And then the last time was when I was going to be killed, another 2 years later. And that too had its effect.
Sorry.
And that had me, the person that I stood up against then changed their mind and had me and rescued me from the network.
Oh, okay.
Anneke, can I ask you, well, first of all, Christian, your microphone is not working very well. You might want to adjust it a bit. It's yeah. Anneke, can I ask you, maybe for people who have not heard about you, can you bring us a bit more into your reality when you were a child? You're talking about a network, you're talking about orgies, you're talking about maybe terms that are not really familiar to people who have never heard of you. What has happened to you when you were a child, and how did you come into those circles and networks?
Yes, thank you. So I'm not sure how I got in, but I was groomed. My mother got married when I was 3, and we moved to this new place. And I think she and I were targeted from the beginning. And I was groomed by a woman who ended up working for us as a cleaning lady. And she and her husband were pimps for this network. And I think I was eyed by a woman from a noble family, aristocrat, who was working with this cleaning woman, and she was the connection to the network. So the cleaning woman and her husband groomed me and my parents for 1 year, and then brought me to an orgy. And this noblewoman was connected to this network. In Belgium, it was mostly what I saw was aristocrats who were offering their castles for these orgies to take place, and mixing with politicians and businessmen and any, people who are the highest of the social echelon. So these were the politicians that I saw, and then used children as a tool for many things. It was mostly to create the system of bribery, so that anyone who was becoming part of this club and was working their way up in the system would at some point would be compromised, whether it was with raping a young child, which was recorded secretly, or whether it was because they were then attending a ritual where there might be a human sacrifice. And then they were owned. And on the other hand, children were used also to reach out to even more powerful people on the world scale. So I was given as a gift, together with another child, to an American who was very powerful. And I was given to a German high-placed politician. I was given to a Russian, an Italian. And these were all people, I didn't know who they were then, but once I started looking afterwards as an adult, they were very easy to find because they were so high ranking. And so children were traded and given away for sacrifice or for sex, and as gifts to connect with those powerful people, and then for the big fish in Belgium to become part of an even bigger pond, let's say.
Wow.
So the pedophilia is, and still today, nothing's really done to change it, is the secret currency for the most powerful people in the world. And it's a very dark system where everyone is owned and bribed, and no one who reaches the top is innocent, or no one who reaches the top is not compromised. I think that's why the world looks the way it does today, because the people who are in charge are not going to end wars. That's not the point. They're not going to end the war. They're not going to do anything for the people.
Wow. And you, like you said, that even today, no powerful person is innocent. Do you still think that, like, when you look into politics nowadays or business leaders, I mean, we have had in Germany some scandals, or they are quite prominent. You think that all person in high political places have had like contact with those networks, or are in such a network?
I'm sure that certain politicians start off with the best intentions and with real passion and wanting to create a difference. But when we're talking really top levels, I work with survivors of satanic ritual abuse, younger people who are telling me of the current leaders. And I've been surprised.
But would you say that, I mean, are these people corrupted over the time? Or would you say you do need a certain preset in order to go there?
Yes, both. So I don't think anyone who has a heart and who is connected to themselves as a higher being, that's to say, who has been loved and who has a sense of right and wrong, which comes from being loved and a sense of the self as sacred and higher than the body. So what we have is people who are extremely emotionally damaged, and it is those who are most damaged who will continue on in the system, because anyone who has a sense of right and wrong at some point will say, that's it, I'm not doing it. Where you have someone like Ronald Bernard speaking, a Dutchman who was in this network from the other end. And then he said his conscience started to wake up, and then he couldn't do it anymore. And so he backed out.
This is wasn't he investment banker or something like this? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So anyone with a conscience, that's to say someone who's in connection with themselves and who has any kind of emotional reality and is going to say it's not worth it. People can compromise to a certain level and say, the message I have is more important, so I'm going to forgo all the negative stuff that I'm having to take with this, to a certain degree you can do that. But when it comes to child rape, when it comes to knowing at least that your colleagues are doing that, then if you keep going, you can't do it if you're healthy in any way. So everything this power system does is to push you away from healing trauma. So it's basically all built on unresolved trauma.
Yeah.
That's underneath everything, is the unresolved trauma of each individual that engages, that has no sense of self, that needs power to give themselves a sense of self. It's the most powerful self-esteem replacement, but tricky.
So it's basically the shadows attract the shadows if you don't get rid of them, basically.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the shadows are ruling the earth right now.
Yes. So basically, if I understand it correct, what you're saying is that if you stay long enough in the system as a politician or as a top leader or whatever, or military or, I don't know, police or whatever, that then people will approach you, basically? You will be approached?
For sure.
For sure.
You're going to be owned by somebody. Mm-hmm. And then, based on whom you're owned by, you're going to be made to look a certain way and present a certain cause. What you initially may have set out fully, sincerely to change, you may still speak for that cause, but it won't be to get the same result anymore. It'll be to look good. Yeah. It'll be because ultimately everything is to get the money resource back in the pockets of the wealthy. It's the complete perversion of what money is. So it's this endless greed. And that is what needs to shift.
Yes. Yes.
And to tell you more about my situation, my perpetrators were all on the right. They were all right wing. And they were actually, they might not have been active in the Nazi regime, but they were Nazis. And I was sent to Germany for training. And I was sent by an American, but he was funding this German doctor. And I was trained, that's to say, torture-based training in Germany. Where eugenics played a role. And there was something about the fact that I had brown hair and brown eyes that was not the best, but because of my intelligence and because of my strength, I was valuable. And so I was trained for a specific purpose to be a sex slave to the elite. That is by the American, so he could own me as his personal sex slave. And also as a killer. And I was trained as a killer because in the presence of the American, I believe, I had shown great feeling for a child that was killed. And so he was training me to not feel. He had me trained to not feel, to become psychopathic. So I had to go through this training myself, which the children of the wealthy, of those families that are in the ruling positions on earth, they go through these trainings themselves. They're all abused themselves. Abuse is passed on as training, as it's the perverse way to release superpowers. It's the unspiritual way. But it deals with the unmanifested and dark powers. And they were fighting the communists. So I've heard that on some level, there's just a few people that are deciding what is happening on a global level. But the powerful men who abused me, they were really fighting a communism, or that was their front. And that's how they came together so this is the 60s and 70s in Europe, with Americans funding eugenics, interested in eugenics, interested in everything that the Nazis were interested in. And that training, which is called the mind control training, that was taken over by the Americans, it comes from the Nazis.
Yeah, true.
So there are some people who say that the Nazis really won the war because there's a secret fascist agenda.
Anneke, what do you think about the world right now, knowing what you know? When you read news, when you see people, I don't know, becoming superheroes on social media, in television, about, actually popular mainstream media. I mean, what is your reality right now when you read this, when you think about the world, how the world has developed? Plus, and I am, like we had it in the pre-talk a bit, I didn't know about those networks before Christian told me actually about Clara's background and story a bit. Then I heard about you. And I was really, right now, I'm like literally realizing that what Christian has told me all about for a longer time. I didn't know about those networks and circles and those conspiracy theories and so on and so on. So the question, what do you think about popular mainstream news and media. Well, yeah.
Yeah. See, it's called conspiracy theories, but the conspiracy is really against us, the people, that I think. And then it's labeled conspiracy theory because it's then becomes this weird thing. You know, I was taken off Wikipedia. I was on Wikipedia and then I was taken off once my story went viral. So it's sort of everything is opposite. The mainstream media is owned. And living in the United States is really interesting because the brainwashing here is so strong. Because we're all living in a country where slavery is just continued under a different guise. You know, the prison system is a way that the slavery system in the United States is just continuing. And the lack of privilege that people of color have in this country is used for white people who are just a little bit, better to feel that they don't have it so bad because things are really rough here. Like if Social Security is non-existent. It's very hard to survive here. So if you're poor in this country, you're completely screwed. So the brainwashing, I think, has to be stronger for people to believe that things are okay. So while the mainstream media and alternative media, you see this brainwashing, you see celebrities who are slaves also, or to this dark agenda, who are being owned, who are spreading messages very particular to what can be said and what cannot be said based on the agenda. I don't really watch the news very much, but that is happening on the one hand, and I feel that there's a sort of a stepping up of the pace of making it more so because people are waking up everywhere. Like you just found out, but I don't find you turn it off. Did you go like, this is impossible, I can't believe this? Because it sounds like you're interested and you're not like saying that this is crazy, not possible, that this is true.
No, I mean, for me it was because I always had this awareness of these dark forces as well, and for me this was, it's kind of beyond truth in a sense that I think you have a very good inner compass for if someone is lying generally, or if someone is talking the truth. And when I listen to pretty much any politician, I see on their forehead a big. It's exactly the opposite as what I tell you. Yeah. So for me, it's a physical reaction. I immediately get a dense feeling, and I go, no, this person is not talking the truth. Yeah. And I had this as a child already. So it wasn't an intellectual process at the beginning. It's only then when I was a teenager, like I think I started with 16, 17, yeah, to really research, And if you research, if you read, for example, simple things like this data protection novel they did now, yeah. Probably I'm one of the few people who actually read the whole text in English and in German, yeah. And when you read this, and then you suddenly read, I studied law a bit as well, so I have a kind of background, yeah. So there are like half sentence, quarter sentence. When you read them, you go like, shit, this is like 100% Nazi, 100%. This is like, Hitler would have been jealous of how genius this is. Yeah, and at the moment it's not used. Yeah, but if you basically go and think, okay, let's say we would have a different government here at a certain time maybe, and they want to use that. Yeah, we are sorry, but we are fucked. But seriously, yeah, and and people go like, oh, it's good, it's all data protection and blah blah blah. Yeah. Yes, it might be, but that's not the main reason why they did it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So you have the greatest corporations are all part of a rather dark agenda. But I think it's up to us because, so on the one hand, there's this darkness which is being revealed increasingly because we can. 30 years ago, I couldn't say anything to anyone.
Yes.
20 years ago, I couldn't say anything to anyone. Even 10 years ago, I didn't feel that I could say anything, because I'm not crazy and I don't want people to think I'm crazy. So I can't speak into a void. I couldn't tell my story because I'd be speaking into a void. I'd be bumping up against the wall. There's no listening there for what I was sharing.
Well, I think a lot of things are changing. I mean, we have a very good friend with whom we work as well, and they're working on I would say they're working, for the light, and they're really trying to, move things around. And for example, I had a very strong feeling like 3 or 4 years ago that there could be a war in Europe again, but not within the European countries, but a kind of, a proxy war, Russia against the United States, but in Europe. So however mad this might sound, I wasn't too unhappy that Miss Clinton did not get president, because she is for me a total warmonger and an insane person to a highest extent. Yeah, when I look at her energy and her aura and so on. And I know that a lot of people worked for not having a war and for change. And now things are changing. For example, in the East Ukraine, yeah, they now are withdrawing troops. So it's kind of calming down again. And I really think that we have the power. And if the more people would do that and the more people would work on that direction, the more people will also clear their own karma. Yeah, maybe we all created all this shit some lifetimes ago. You know what I mean? I think then things are changing now because the shadows are more and more uncovered, and they're made visible.
Absolutely. And I don't think Trump is going to get any credit for withdrawing troops. But also don't be fooled by Trump either, because there's just too many people in the truth community that have fallen for this new lie. He's no different. It's not going to be an old white man who's going to be a savior. We have to just accept that right now. Or an old white woman. I think what we need to know and what is changing is that as each one of us heals individually, we become more empowered and we get this ability that you had from childhood to see the truth. Because brainwashing only works to the degree that I'm messed up already, I'm traumatized, so I'll take the lies. Because in my trauma, in my abuse, I've already been told a lie. That's to say, the abuse comes with this message that I am bad, I am dirty, whatever the message is. And if I'm a child, I have to accept this lie about me now. Now I'm stuck with this lie that I am bad, when in fact I'm light. And I think I am this and I am that based on the message, overt or implicit, that comes with the abuse. So as I heal and I get this new perspective, I move from the perspective of the child who is just loving the person who's abusing us out of fear, and I move out of that, and I grow up from that. I feel all those feelings that had to be repressed in the moment. And I do grow up. I get to see the child that I was from my compassionate adult self, and I can embrace that child. And I know that was a lie. And I'm healed because I know the truth. And I'm in connection with the truth in myself. And to the degree that I have this, I can also see the BS outside. So if there's the brainwashing coming, if I'm more aware and I've done my own work, I can see it and I don't have to fall for it. So the more that we collectively heal, the more that we can go against it. And all we need to do really is to open our eyes, is to say, like, if that's a politician and I voted for that politician, they better do what I want them to do. they're not going to take my vote and run and then stuff their pockets and just work for the people above them, which is the way the system is set up right now. That even if we vote in the United States, we vote for somebody, they don't even technically work for us. They don't owe us anything once they're voted in. They owe those who are above them, technically, legally. So we have to change it. We are much more powerful than those few people who are keeping the control, and they're keeping the control. Power is a lie. Power
Absolutely.
is an addiction, and it's a lie. So the lies are all there to keep us believing that we need those people to do things that they'll never do. So we have to keep believing that there's going to be this one next politician who is going to do the right thing. Like everyone votes for Trump, saying he's the one who's going to bring change, and he's the one who's going to put the pedophiles to behind bars. And whatever he is doing, he has a model. It's Jacksonian. He comes from a place where he wants to. He's saying we're not a superpower anymore. Let's keep things local. So that is a perspective in the United States that doesn't even reach the news. Because he's like an odd duck out, right? He's showing just exactly how immature all of them are. Like an eyesore. There's me. It's me.
Yeah.
Complete idiot. Looks like a complete idiot and says whatever comes, but they're all like that. They really are all like that. They are all power hungry, infantile instruments of darkness.
Well, it's like
Hillary Clinton is just much better at hiding it.
But you see that I saw some talks which I found really scary. There was one thing which was televised in Germany where she was talking about, the Russians and there was this aggression coming out, and what she said, it was, I thought, what, how, especially a woman, for me, women are actually on a big scale, much more, in my observation anyhow, much more, aware generally, I would say, and maybe more inclined to the light somehow.
Well, when you're a psychopath, when you're a woman psychopath,
yes,
and you have power, it just makes, I'm not going to talk about anybody in particular, but it would make them worse because as a woman, every woman experiences humiliation just for being a woman. Yeah. And I've seen journalists be completely disrespectful to, big female politicians, and I see it all the time. You're just being a woman, you're going to be humiliated. Yeah. So the thing about power is that you're trying to ward off the humiliation through power. You give your self-esteem by power, and then everyone's going to be afraid of you and, try to please you. And so you're used to people pleasing you. And at the same time, that everybody's just pleasing you because they're scared of you. And that nobody, and you can't ever feel loved. You just isolate yourself more. But when a woman goes that route, they're worse than men because every time she experiences the experiences of being a woman and being humiliated, there's so much more vengefulness that comes up. So if a woman goes perverse, it's even worse than men.
It's true. And can I just, because I don't forget this question, quickly come back to the kind of beginning of our talk. You said, you and your mother had been groomed by this cleaning lady you had, who was working for some circles, yeah? I mean, what can I understand, or what can we understand on being groomed? I mean, how because I think it might be interesting for our audience as well, in a sense of what are the signs, what how does this happen, being groomed? I mean, I understand the word intellectually, yeah, but I can't put a particular action to it.
Yes, so in this case, being groomed was that my parents were being groomed. I didn't like her, never liked her, but I had to go with her because they offered to take me, and that was convenient for my parents. So,
but to take you, I mean, to look after you, or did your parents know what was happening?
They looked after me. So they took me swimming. They took me on regular outings, and there were always a lot of children around. They're always different. And they were from Holland. I was in Belgium. So they were saying, oh, our nieces and nephews. They were just other children.
Okay.
That they were taking to the network. So, but my mother, I think I was picked partially for my mother, because my mother, I think it was clear right away that my mother would allow it, that my mother is not well. Now, my mother not only allowed it, but she became my pimp herself. So it was I think we were chosen, but the signs were, I was telling my mother that bad things had been done to me. I tried everything to speak. So I think it's very important to listen to children and to take them seriously for what they say.
Yes.
And if a child often doesn't have the vocabulary to say what happened. So all I could say was bad things had happened, because I don't know these words. 5, 6 years old, you don't know the words. Also, I had been threatened very graphically not to say something, so I was also afraid when I was saying it. So it's just to listen to children and to look. There were signs, there were physical signs. My mother would have me wear long sleeves when it was warm. Sometimes if I had bruises or tights. There were signs. Just no one saw anything in my childhood. Nobody.
I think this is so important what you said, that we have to listen to children. We have to really very carefully listen, and even if they don't find the words, I think that's absolutely crucial.
And there's that little voice of innocence.
Yes, yes.
Ja, ich komme kaum dazu, was zu sagen, weil ich beschäftigt bin, aber er findet dich so interessant, dass er lieber wach sein möchte.
Ja, aber sagen Sie etwas.
Ja. Ich bin nicht sicher, ob ich das richtig verstanden habe vorhin, weil ich nur wenig gehört habe. Hast du das so gesagt, also habe ich das richtig gehört, dass du meintest, die Politiker oder die hohen Leute, die da involviert waren, die mussten sozusagen, um zu diesem Zirkel dazuzugehören und um aufsteigen zu können und größer zu werden, mussten sie sich an Kindern vergehen oder mussten sie eine bestimmte Art von Ritual durchführen, oder habe ich das falsch verstanden?
No, yeah, that is, well, they had to, that's to say they had to be compromised in some way. So a lot of them are pedophiles, and so they're easy to compromise. And so they're chosen because they're pedophiles. And then it's easy to have stuff on them to blackmail them. But if it's not that, it is knowing, or it's to be witnessing things that are really dark, that can always be used against them.
Und was ich dich noch fragen wollte, bei mir war das so, also in meiner Erinnerung ist es so, dass mir gesagt wurde, ich soll nicht darüber sprechen und dann passiert dir was und den Menschen, die du magst. Bei mir hat das sehr lange gedauert, von diesem Gedanken loszukommen, und ich fand das ganz schwierig, und es war sogar so stark in mir verankert, dass ich das teilweise gesagt habe, ohne das zu wissen. Also ich habe zum Beispiel irgendwann mal zu Christian gesagt, am besten vergisst du mich und wir sehen uns nie wieder, weil das ist zu gefährlich für dich. Und ich konnte mich nicht daran erinnern, dass ich es gesagt habe, aber er hat mich dann gefragt, was hast du da eigentlich gemeint? Und wie hast du das geschafft, diesen Gedanken von dir wegzuschieben, damit du dir selbst die Erlaubnis gibst, überhaupt existieren zu dürfen?
Well, Well, good for you that you did feel safe enough and have the courage to speak up. Because yes, you were told you cannot say anything, and you're going to put yourself and the people you love in danger. So it's just not just you, because if it's just you, probably it's easier. Yes, but they always involve others.
Okay.
So I'm still careful. I'm still, I was definitely told the same. We're going to come and find you and kill you if you ever speak up about this. So I've always just played with, just calculated risk. At some point when I felt strong enough, I said, if I don't speak now, I'm a coward. Or if I don't speak now because there is this issue in the world. And anyone who's come forward, Regina Louf in the Dutroux case came forward, she was ridiculed. The Dutroux case has all but disappeared in Belgium. Kathy O'Brien spoke up in the 90s. She wasn't heard. All of us who have spoken up are marginalized. And I don't mind being marginalized, but I think it is important to add my voice to this phenomenon so that there's another voice. Yes, there's more and more people speaking out, and you can know that it's true. So, again, though, there's also the light. I do feel protected. You're hearing the cat play with the cat's playing with a toy. I do feel protected. I don't want to be stupid, and think that I'm protected when in fact I'm not. But I do feel protected. I think that my best protection is that I don't really want revenge. Because I can see that this system is really not working for the perpetrators. It's not working for anyone. I see the perpetrators as former victims who didn't have the strength and the courage to break away from the love they felt as children for their perpetrators. So the behavior they were modeled is still okay. That's the good behavior. So I don't really envy them. My life's been very, very, very difficult. Going through all those feelings, all that pain. Oh my God. I don't wish it on anybody. I don't wish it on. There's a lot of brave people who are going through a lot of pain from healing, but they experience also the light that comes from healing, which is worth everything to me. So it took a really long time for me to stop envying my perpetrators, none of whom were caught, who were all very well-to-do financially, And I wasn't always. So this is just a new way I'm healing to really allow the abundance, to not be like an ascetic about money either. It's all healing. Everything is healing. And for all that to flow freely and to feel this connection through meditation with the grace, I feel, I have such a rich inner life. I don't envy a psychopath who's very, very sick.
Yes.
Poor person, really, such poverty of spirit.
Very empty, right?
Completely empty. Everything's a lie. Just imagine everything is a lie. And part of you knows it. You're wasting your life. Because when we meet death, when at the moment of death, how do we want to leave the body? So we find that these men, they just hang on, they cling to their body because that's all they have, and then they can get to be very old or whatever. But it's such oh please, so I would not ever want all those riches, and then I think we could like create a list of shame, like the 10 richest people in the world is like list of shame. Because if you belong on the 10 richest people in the world, it means that you are so greedy that you haven't like dispersed your wealth to help others, and that whatever you're saying about that is just not true.
Yes.
Ja.
Something like that.
Okay. Ja, ich glaube, dass, was du jetzt gerade gesagt hast, ist auch das, was mich von Anfang an so fasziniert hat an dir. Ich habe dir zugehört und ich hatte nicht das Gefühl, du leidest oder du möchtest jetzt jedem sagen, was dir Schlimmes widerfahren ist, sondern es war eher so, als wolltest du einfach Licht in die Welt bringen und sagen, es ist da was geschehen und ich möchte darüber sprechen und ich mache das aber deshalb, um anderen auch die Plattform zu geben, darüber zu sprechen oder damit sich mehr Menschen trauen. Und das finde ich so schön. Also auch wenn ich dich jetzt sehe, du leuchtest so von innen heraus und das ist wahnsinnig, weil es gibt so wenige Menschen wie dich, die solche Dinge, mir fällt das Wort nicht an, geschehen lassen passt irgendwie nicht, aber die solche Dinge erfahren haben und trotzdem das Leben lieben. Und ich finde, das wirkt so, als würdest du das Leben lieben und das finde ich ganz toll.
Well, when you've been in the depression, when you've been in the pain so much, now I can love life. Now I can love life. It's great, but because I know the difference,
Ja, schön.
but also pain is just part of life, So in the United States especially, I think there's such a push to like try to make pain go away or pretend it's not there. So it's part of the lies.
Ja. Anneke, wenn jetzt jemand zuhört, der noch sexuellen Missbrauch erlebt oder rituellen Missbrauch oder irgendeine Art von Missbrauch, gibt es irgendetwas, was du ihm raten kannst, wenn er sich jetzt im Moment noch nicht traut, darüber zu sprechen oder direkte Hilfe zu suchen, was er tun kann, damit es ihm besser geht?
Christian, would you mind translating the question, since we might have English listeners only? And
The question was, which Clara asked, is what, Anneke, would you advise and recommend to people who still experience sexual abuse or ritual abuse or any kind of abuse, and who maybe are on this threshold to get out or to want to change something, but they don't dare yet to talk about it to other people or to open themselves? Is there anything they could do maybe in order to start to step out of that?
Well, I'd say that shame is the biggest trap of any sexual abuse.
Wow.
Shame. And to break out of shame is very, very difficult. To break through the shame is very, very difficult. But I'd like everyone to know that you are not alone. That in my experience, I have a group on Wire of survivors of satanic ritual abuse. And the things are shared there. So you think that there's something that you went through that was so crazy. Nobody would ever. No, there are others who have been through it also. We all have these. That's so cute. We all have these things in common. And we have not only the experience in common, but also our reactions to them. And everything about you can be seen and heard and understood.
This was part 1 of Anneke's interview with us. We hope that you have enjoyed it so far and that you tune in for the second part next week. Bye bye.